In technique, it's a different technique in as much that you have to try and keep the engine wound up. It has no torque, as we know it in a V8 type engine. It has no surge of power. It's simply a whip-along feeling, and even the road cars are like that. Really, the faster you go, the faster they keep going, and the aerodynamics of the body come into it. You don't get that feeling where the car ever slows down. It does actually keep accelerating right up to about over 160 miles an hour. But it doesn't have any feeling of acceleration. So from a driving point of view, you want to brake earlier and float through the corners so that you're already on the fly. You can't afford the luxury of running up to a corner, slamming on the brakes, getting yourself right, and then having that power to pick you up and take you off down the straight like you do in a V8 powered car. I think it's important to the business world, to our sponsors, to prove that Alan Moffat Racing is not a figment of someone's imagination. And a lot of people would be of the opinion that because Ford left, that we were going to crumble up in a heap. And I think it's important that I do a little personal sales promotion here and point out to people that are of that opinion that Moffat Racing Company is my company. And the development that is created here is amongst the fellows and the engineers that I have as friends around the world, and now, fortunately, direct with the factory in Hiroshima at TKK. And in that respect, it's important to me to show that we're in business. And after last year's just absolutely dismal showing, people lose confidence in your ability to do that. And it's important that as a team and as a company, we appear to be in business. That's what Bathurst 81 means to me.
A very composed and very confident Alan Moffat. That's exactly the way he is on the racetrack today.
His words really start to make you think if, as I recall, if 2 or 3 of the V8s really get involved, 2 of them won't make it. Kevin Bartlett and through bad luck, and of course Peter Brock haven't made it into the top 10 at this stage. Brock with problems, and obviously Kevin Bartlett, as you've seen earlier on the telecast, with his own individual problems. So Moffat still storming back through the field up into 4th place at this stage and leading the index of performance.
Only 3 cars now on the front lap, and they are the V8s. Car 17, Johnson, Falcon. Car 7, Bob Morris, the Falcon. Car 11, Gary Rogers, the Commodore. And 4th place outright on the track is the Mazda of Alan Moffat.
Okay, there's the Alan Grice car, the BMW John Player Special. The co-driver, of course, is David Hobbs. Drives for BMW North America. Doing very nicely, trying to consolidate now after the problems that Alan experienced with an excursion into the sand trap at the end of Conrod Straight.
Put him 6 laps down.
Very valuable 6 laps too. But Hobbs doing a good job. He's not unfamiliar to these type of cars. Very experienced driver. Okay, let's go to the pit area now, and Alan Grice. Hopefully we might be able to get Alan on talkback to David Hobbs.
Well, Alan Grice in the pits here, a little recovered from the disappointment of being caught in the sand. And let's see if we can have a chat with David Hobbs in the car. We're following David now. We're in the car, and maybe you'd like to have a conversation with your co-driver.
David, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay, David?
He may be a little stunned to hear you speaking to him. I don't know whether he's coming through. We'll try again to get David Hobbs to come in. Alan Grice is speaking to you, David Hobbs. We'll wait to get round the corner. Okay, let's just talk to you, though, Alan. It could be that in all the confusion of the stop after you were caught in the sand, that they may have not have connected the clip. I know there was some concern by Frank Garner that he wasn't plugged in properly. Maybe he can't hear.
Yeah.
So instead, as he drives around with the camera in the unique position on the right-hand side of the car, talk us around the lap and just tell us what it's like out there and what the car is like to drive.
Well, he's in second right now. He's just taken 3rd, actually, and he'll take 4th just near the top of this hill. He's in 4th now and over the top, and back in the braking area. He'll be back to 3rd. With a full load of gas, he may be back to 2nd. In tight there, in tight but not a wheel over the edge, and then out and up. And if he's in third because of the fuel load, he's in second, I'm sorry, he'll go into third now. This is where there's a lot of cars often parked on the left around the corner you've got to watch. And he's in tight. Yes, there are a lot of rocks out today. Just about everybody is having to get away from those rocks because they're very sharp. It's funny, on some circuits, run over rocks is not much of a problem because they're the soft type, but here in Bathurst, they're very granity type rock, and you've got to keep well away from them. You can get a puncture very easily. Although I don't need rocks and punctures to get into trouble. I can do that by myself, no problem.
The line you have to take is really upset by cars in front. We saw there how David had to take a very curious line into the corner because of the slow car. Must be a real hazard here in Mount Panorama.
Yes, it is, and one of the bigger things that when you come up on cars like that, they very often choose the best way through for themselves, which is understandable. It gives you the non-line past them, if you like, which puts you into a gravelly and sand and marble situation, and it's very, very slippery and very easy to make a mistake. But, out of that line, it's amazing how much rubbish there is on the track at the moment. Just rolled up rubber and light gravel, sand, bits of shrapnel from flares and motor cars, and then that sort of rubbish is not on the correct line. But of course you can't always stay on the correct line, and that's when you can get into strife. You'll notice down here that David will keep right to the left-hand side of the road. The car actually jumps off the road there, and the rear wheels spin. If they spin too much, of course, you can over-rev the engine.
Here's the corner with the sand trap on the end, and that's where you can see your tyre mark still in up here. The sand sort of side for you. What sort of speed are you doing down the straight before you come around that bend up?
We're getting 158 miles an hour plus tyre growth, so it'd be very close to 160 miles an hour. The car has been since about lap 20 walking around at the rear under brakes. Maybe they're not hot enough. The braking system on the car is extremely efficient, and although we're working them as hard as we can, we're not saving the brakes at all. We're right into them. Maybe they were going through a phase of building up scale, which they sometimes do in a long-distance race, and they were tending to steer the car under brakes. That's not an excuse for my faux pas, but they were tending to steer the car under brakes. The car from the outside would have looked, I would imagine, unstable. You may have seen it, Evan. You're a pretty keen eye for motor cars. But it's a period sometimes that your brake lines or your brake pads and your brake discs go through. Then they'll clear up. One particularly hard application when the temperatures are all right and you clean the discs off, and suddenly you've got another car again. But that's a normal thing to expect with a 1,000-kilometre race.
Now, David has a couple of cars in front, so let's watch while you talk as he goes around the top of the mountain over the Philamy Park. This very fast sweeping bend and right down through the bend.
It's like a Bob Holden is coming up to, and Bob's on the correct line through, which puts David on the marbles there a little, but Bob's normally a very good bloke to pass. You can rely on him. Here he's coming up onto another one. It's right now, it'd be a case of pick the right gear and wait for to realise that the guy's seen you. This fella hasn't seen him yet. I would say he has now. There he's waved and he's got over and he's given David the line. He's on the correct race line. He's been a good guy to pass.
Form a list of the good ones and the bad ones, the ones you've got to be wary of.
Yes, there are some guys that you come up behind and you think really the best and safest way to pass them is with a 12-gauge shotgun. Other blokes are very good and they see you coming and they position their own motor car because, you know, there are some guys like Bob Holden that I already mentioned that he realises the faster he can get an overtaking car to pass him, the sooner they're out of their hair and he can get on with his own job. And so if he gives away a couple of tenths of a second early, he's not haunted by the car, if you like.
Where do you brake at this point?
We're braking consistently at 300 yards, which is that's about as good as any motor car is doing out there today. You've got that car under brakes. He's obviously having no problems with the brakes. I'm particularly pleased about that. As I said to you earlier, one of the things that I was concerned about was when the car suddenly stops in the sand, where the actual place that the brake pads come to rest on the disc are an enormous temperature, terribly hot. They would actually be glowing quite red when the car stopped in the sand, and sometimes with that hot spot you can crack a disc. There goes a Camaro talking up the mountain past him with that 6-litre engine. Now David will be all over him through this corner. So he picked picks him up there coming out. Once again, and they get in a straight line, the Camaro talks away from him with his 6-litre. By the time they get to the cutting, he'll be right on his backside again. There he is, picking him up. He's gone back to second now. A lot closer. And then the Camaro talks again. That car looks pretty untidy at the back, actually. I wonder how long he's been out on those tyres. He looks pretty untidy. Looks like his tyres are not terribly pleasant things at the moment.
You've got quite a problem with tyre wear, and David, having gone out with new tyres, I presume he changed rubber when he came in?
Yes, we did.
Because of the sand?
Yes,
he'd have to wait a few laps for them to bed in properly and warm up, I assume.
Well, the 4 mile circuit, they're just about right in one lap round there. Particularly a guy like David, with his experience with BMWs, he'll all over the world, actually, racing all over the world. He'll be very experienced. The first lap, he would have worked very hard to profile his tyres.
Alan Grice, as we follow David Hobbs in the JPS BMW. We're told that, by the way, Jim Richards, circulating in the Peter Brock car, is doing 2 minutes 22 seconds. Very fast time. More action when we return to the great race here at Mount Panorama, Bathurst.
The man on the left asking for directions is Masahiro Hasimi, one of the 2 Japanese drivers in car 56, which was the leading car, the Nissan Bluebird, in the 4-cylinder class. And that car has expired about 250 metres up Mountain Straight and pulled off the circuit, and that would now, I was going to say, put Peter Williamson in the lead in the 4-cylinder class. So I'll have to check that, because I think he might have made a quick pit stop. No, there he is, Willow in front in that class at the moment, following the expiration of the Nissan Bluebird.
Okay, let's go back to the pit area to take an update with Evan Green.
I was just going to come in a bit about the Japanese car, actually, Mike.
Yes, Evan.
They had trouble on the start of the race, actually, amongst all the drama there. We might have caught up what was happening further back, but the Japanese, that's Bluebird, had to have an oil pump line changed on the start line. They were very lucky to get started in the race at all. And it may be that it's been a recurrence of that trouble, as Howard Marsden's team did an extraordinary quick job to get the car in the race. Now, there's Hasemi, who was the Japanese Formula Atlantic champion in 77 and 78, showing he's not a bad jogger as well, running back to the pits, maybe to pick up the oil line that he needs, if that's the trouble. He doesn't speak any English, so it's going to take someone who understands what he's saying to find out what his real need is. But he's running to the pits, a long run, to see if he can get help. So obviously he thinks he can get the car back in the race. But he did have trouble before the event started. Their team car, number 55, which was being driven by George Fury at the time, also made a stop to work on the rear suspension, which was playing up. So that's handed the race across to Peter Williamson, who earlier on, I suspect, thought that this was one Bathurst in which he wasn't going to win his class, because those 2 turbocharged Nissan entries, the return of the Japanese factories to the race after a 7-year gap, and the first turbo entries you've seen looked as though they'd dominate racing, because under this new system with cars classified just according to the number of cylinders, it seemed to give an extraordinary advantage towards a turbocharged car. But they've had trouble, and if Hasemi is a quick runner, he might get back in the race. But I think at this stage, Peter Williamson, driving for the Toyota dealers team, but having a lot of, shall we say, benign factory interest, is back in the lead of the race. 3 Japanese factories this year. Mazda, of course, supporting very strongly Alan Moffat, and they must be delighted, the gentleman of Toyo Kogyo. And Peter Williamson with the Toyota dealers, and Nissan making a big entry this year with their turbos, although, as Howard Marsden was saying, this is just the first of a long-term plan. Not too hopeful they do well this year, looking more towards 1982 or 1983. Peter Williamson, though, has looked at this year's race, and he's looking pretty good. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan. Before you depart down there, any reports at all coming from the Johnson pits? Is everything running smoothly there and no problems?
I think things are going so smoothly they're getting worried. I do have Johnny Harvey with me, though, and he, as you know, went out up in the Essex there when he put the car in the fence. I wasn't quite sure at the time what had happened, but Johnny, who's sitting with me now, has been telling me what the problem was. It wasn't Graham Bailey's fault, and maybe John Harvey, you could just run through, as we watch Peter Williamson and other assorted cars go around, what the problem was.
Yes, Evan, I unfortunately just picked up a small rock, which punctured a tyre, so viewers don't spend any money. It was only a very small rock. I think if I'd have punctured the tyre at any other corner on the circuit, I'd have probably been able to save the car. But however, at the depot, I just turned left into the depot, the car went straight ahead, hit the Armco, bounced back out in the middle of the road, and unfortunately the Chickadee Toyota, who I just passed, collected the back of the car. Was not his fault. put him off the road into the wall on the other side of me, back into the arm car down the road a piece. The car at the time was just honking along beautiful. There was just no problem with it whatsoever. In fact, the tyre wasn't even worn out. I wasn't even planning on changing it at the pit stop. It would have done another 50 laps, so it was just pretty unlucky.
So for the second year in succession, a Rock has claimed one of the front runners, because Johnny Harvey running in second spot at the time. Now, Peter Brock's car is still out there after a fairly traumatic start, with the back end having to be changed. Jim Richards is at the wheel, and the reports from our crew down here in the pits is that Jim Richards is turning in by far the quickest times as we watch the George Fury Datsun Bluebird go around. That our New Zealander, Jimmy Richards, is flying around in 2:22. He's 4 seconds and 5 seconds a lap faster than the leaders.
That's right. Jim really is a sensational driver. As the viewers may not know, that Jim only did 4 laps of practice in the lead up to this race. He did one warm-up lap. His second, or his first flying lap, was a 2-minute 23. And that's all he's done all week, and he's jumped in the car now doing 22s. That's really fantastic effort.
Those are the fastest times he's ever recorded, even in the A9X days with the Triumph. So he's going...
Well, the Commodores handle a lot better than the old Tiranas. I mean, they haven't got the speed down the straight of the Fords or the Camaros, but around the bends, there's nothing that can beat a Commodore, and Jim is really using it up to its extreme at the moment.
Evan Green, if I can interrupt for a moment. John Harvey, if you're still there, John.
Yes, Mike.
When are you going to break the Bathurst jinx?
Look, mate, people have been talking about me winning. I mean, really, all I want to do is try and finish a Bathurst without even worrying about winning it.
Absolutely incredible. And I mean, the problems that have beset the Marlborough Holden dealer team today have been problems that have, you can understand one car, certainly, but to have both cars and everything go wrong all of a sudden, how has that put the spirits of the team at this stage?
Well, I haven't really had a chance to talk to lads. They'll obviously be very disappointed. I mean, I'm totally crushed. I mean, my car was just honking along so well, and I thought I can do this all day long. At least I can finish second here. I didn't think I could beat Dick unless he had some problem. But all things being equal, I don't think I could have beaten him. But, I mean, we had a day like this a few years ago in Adelaide where both cars were out within about 5 or 6 laps. But I guess everybody has a bad day occasionally.
Bad days. Some of them had bad moments too. That was David Hobbs in the left-hand drive BMW. Maybe got a bit of sand that was still caught up in the muffler, dropped down on the tyres. Had a half spin there. Seems to have got the car okay. I don't know whether he had any other trouble, but I'm sure David Hobbs will be now looking for any possible flat spots on the tyres. Would you say so, John Harvey?
I'd say so, yeah. Also, a problem that we've been facing out there today is there's a lot of rocks on the circuit where I guess people are cutting corners. I bladed just over this section here that's on view now. You come over that hill, you can't see over the top, absolutely flat through there, and the circuit was just strewn with rocks, and it was either the lap that I crashed or the lap before. But I've obviously picked up a rock there somewhere. That is a problem.
Thank you, John. Okay. We've been following Freddie Gibson and the George Fury, the second of the Datsun Bluebirds, the turbocharged cars through, and he's got Peter Williamson there to keep him fairly close company as they come through Forest Elbow and now on the Conrod Straight. There's Williamson, leader in class at the moment. Evan Green, I think, will have an update for us and exactly the problem with the Japanese drivers in the second team car. Take it away, Evan.
Thank you. Yes, Husseini has a flat battery. The battery has gone kaput. And now he's got a long run back to the car, I would think. And he'll want to be a pretty fit driver. He may, in fact, have to come into the pits after having changed the battery, but it is nothing more than a flat battery, which has stopped the teammate of this car number 56, the Husseini, all-Japanese Nissan entry of the turbocharged Bluebird. Won the race here in 1967, is really enjoying his drive in the turbocharged Bluebird. He stepped down a size. And one of the strange things Mike Raymond is that we've got a husband and wife team in the race, but running against each other as rivals, because Christine is running in car 20 with Joe Moore, the King George's Tavern Falcon. She's in the big car class, and Fred's in the small car class, which should make women across Australia stand up and cheer. But that's the husband we're watching at the moment, which might deflate their feelings a little bit. Freddie Gibson pulling away slightly from the Peter Williamson Toyota, as he should. The 1.8-litre Bluebird is turbocharged. And bear in mind that in Formula One racing, a turbocharger automatically doubles the rated capacity of the engine. So if you follow the Formula One principles, the 1.8 litres there is equal to 3.6 litres, which puts it up above the BMW in size. So it's a pretty quick car in potential, very powerful, very complex fuel injection, crossflow heads, twin ignition. This has sold many tens of thousands of these around the world. but these are the first two we've seen in Australia, and they're fairly highly developed racing versions of the Bluebird Turbo, but undoubtedly we're going to see many more turbocharged cars in action in the future. The turbo, of course, is just a system of supercharging in which the car's own exhaust gases are used to drive a fan to compress air, to pump air into the engine, so it's force-fed, forcing a greater mixture of air and fuel into the car, which gives it more potential energy, and it makes it go faster, more powerful. Back to you again, Mike Raymond.
Thank you very much, Evan Green. I think we might take a look now at the IBM four-cylinder readout with Gary Wilkinson.
Oh, there it is, Peter Williamson in 777 Celica, the leader in this class at the present time. 56 with the asterisk is a question mark. That was the class leader up until a couple of laps ago, until they expired on Mountain Straight. Hassimi and Hoshino, the drivers there. The Alfetta going remarkably well. Car 50 of Leggett and McDonald holding down third place in that class on the readout. Then the first of the Geminis, car 60, Jim Fanico, his co-driver, circulating a couple of laps down on Willow, though, about 5 laps behind the leader in the class. And then we have the Corolla of Surplus and Clark, the Escort of Kachi and Farah, and the Lancer of Stevens and Radke.
Okay, as we could see there, Bob Morris coming into the pits, and I think we've had a driver change there, and in fact John Fitzpatrick has taken over the driving chores for the next stanza. Evan Green is in position. I'm sure he'll have Bob Morris along to tell us how that brand spanking new Ford is running. It appears to be running sweetly, going up, over and down the mountain. They're looking pretty good too in the outside, Bob Morris and John Fitzpatrick, and it was a very, very quick pit stop as well. Quite a number of cars in the pits, but let's take a recap now of the race and what has happened so far today. Well, of course, there were the problems with Kevin Bartlett, who led the race for the opening laps of the event, came into contact with one of the recar entries, stormed back into the pit area after glancing off the wall as he put up in the top corner. They all tried to repair the vehicle. It took an awful long time for them to do it. In the meantime, Bartlett, of course, was very, very hot and under the collar. Went up to chip the recar team, found out who was driving the car, and the fella could handle himself, and then left. Okay, there were cars parked all over the mountain in the early stages. Then, of course, we joined the team of Peter Williamson, the Toyota, and almost under a truck that was going to pick that vehicle up. Williamson has now gone on to lead his class. Disaster struck for John Harvey. After having a tyre go off, he cannoned into the wall, was clipped on the way through by Graham Bailey. As he's already mentioned, was not his fault. Harvey, anything but happy. Okay, and that was the view from Peter Williamson's car as they swept beneath it. Williamson went by as Harvey, then of course Graham Bailey retired. Officials were on the scene very quickly, but in a most precarious position. Then trouble for the Alan Grice team as Grice bunkered the BMW. And after a conversation with Alan Grice in the car, they managed to get it back into the pit area. Not long after the fact that they almost sunk it in the quicksand there. There was troubles already. Alan Jones was to take over the Warren Cullen Advance Australia Commodore. He sprayed water over to keep it cool. He did a refresher course on how to start the Commodore, got going again. Cullen was confident that Jones could go on and do the job, but unfortunately he couldn't. One lap, and Jones was back in the pits and out of the race.
After the completion of 70 laps in the great race this year, Dick Johnson in car 17, the True Blue Potential Falcon leads, and by gee, must be piling up that lap money. Coca-Cola sponsoring the first 80 laps at $50 a lap, and Johnson's been leading now for some considerable time. He really must have a pot of money under his belt. He's led for the lion's share of the race so far. Bartlett, Brock, of course, had the lead at the early stages of the event before tragedy befell both of them in different circumstances, but involving traffic on the circuit and damage to the vehicles. Brock's been in and out 3 times in 0.5 and is very far down, 19 laps in fact behind the pace of Dick Johnson at the present time. Kevin Bartlett was in the pits for 20 minutes. He's now 10 laps down. Dick Johnson's got $2,550 up in lap money, having led for 51 laps and 70 laps that he completed.
Well, he's doing well in the dollars. He did well in the dollars last year and didn't finish the race. But this year he's up front and leading it. We'll see how long for, whether it's all the way to the checker. When we return to the great race, the James Hardie 1000 from Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
Many traditions are being broken in this extraordinary James Hardie 1000, and maybe none sadder than it looks as though the marvellous streak of, if I can use the word streak with Peter Jansen without giving false ideas, of Peter Jansen and Larry Perkins, who've come second for 2 years in a row, and before that third, may have ended because you've got troubles, Peter. What's wrong?
Well, when the flag dropped, I got a good start, got around the corner, and the spark must have retarded, just flicked and retarded. I got around the corner, she wouldn't even pull. And I just sat there and I just counted 10 cars just going past me up the hill. And the whole time we've been pulling just third, can't even pull top going up the hill. So it's just been like that all the time, it's just got worse and worse. And to pull the distributor off and get the spark right would just take too much time. Anyway, I think it's about time to go and have a bit of Schweppes and a few cherry ripes and sit down and enjoy myself, because it's going to be a great day.
It might be this year in which Peter Jansen isn't the rooster, but the feather duster.
Yeah, a bit of a feather duster this time. Thank you a lot, Evan.
Bad luck, Peter, but it's great to see a contestant who's had such misfortune still the same old sparkle in the eye.
You better get hold of Muffin. Tell him the next time he knocks a chap and sends him off in an ambulance, we might blow him out of the car.
What happened?
Chap got hit down there with the ambulance with Muffin's car. He's gone off.
We'll pass on the message. Thank
right.
you. You're being called back to the pitch anyhow, Peter. Thank you very much. Peter Banson, back to you, Mike Rankin.
Thank you very much, Evan Green. Well, some drama there that we're just waiting to uncover. OK, we've picked up on our race leader, Dick Johnson, doing it nicely out in front.
1.5 minutes now ahead of Gary Rogers in car 11.
Well, Rogers and Benson Brown have been so consistent running up there in the top 6 practically since the day started. Then, of course, we have the Bob Morris, John Fitzpatrick Channel 7 forward running in 3rd place. Alan Moffat and Derek Bell in the Mazda in 4th. And then, of course, Alan Brown and Tony Edmondson, the National Sports Sedan champion, in 5th place. Just clear of the Falcon, number 30. That's Bill O'Brien and Gary Cook. Well, let's follow our race leader through, Dick Johnson. And I wonder what goes through the mind of Dick Johnson as he heads up to past that infamous part of the track last year that took him out of the race so savagely while leading the event. Dick Johnson is not really a complex man. He's a very determined race car driver. He felt that last year, after people around Australia responded to the telecast and, of course, offered a large amount of money to get his operation back on 4 wheels again, that he should really go and try and win the Australian Touring Car Championship for them. Well, he did just that. Not only did Dick Johnson go on to win the National Touring Car Championship with an absolute fantastic performance, he's also back to Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Johnson, of course, lives in Brisbane, just outside of Brisbane at Daisy Hill. Very unpretentious place. Dick Johnson, not like the regular teams, the big budget teams, does all of the work on his car with one mechanic at home. Dick Johnson can probably explain his own story.
Actually, before Bathurst last year, when the famous rock incident happened, I was always a dedicated motor racer. for many years. I've been racing for 15 odd years, and Bathurst actually last year set us going. We had a car that we'd built over a period of 6 months from an ex-police car that we ran reasonably well at the CRC in 1980 and came second, which was its first showing. And we arrived at Bathurst pretty confident of what the car was capable of. And naturally, everyone that knows about the rock destroyed the whole car, and we had to start again. Actually, our setup is quite a bit different to the majority of the larger teams because we only have a 1 or 2 man operation here, which is at my own home. We're fortunate enough to be in an area where it doesn't affect anyone. Our neighbours never complain because we don't make any noise or anything like that. Well, as you can see, it's a reasonably small workshop, which is a garage of my home where everything else suffers, actually, because my actual road car gets left outside and the race car takes pride of place in the workshop. And we have our racks of tyres. We have to have everything reasonably well set up because of the confined space that we're working in, because things can tend to get pretty cluttered at times. But with the operation we had, straight after Sandown, my mechanic, Roy McDonald, and myself, we jumped in the truck and we drove straight back from Sandown after the race and drove straight through to Brisbane here, where we continued to pull the car to pieces and get it ready for the James Hardy 1000 this weekend. Well, winning the James Hardy 1000 to me virtually means everything, because when I start and do something, I don't normally like to stop until such time as I've achieved what I've originally set out to do. And one of the things that I intended doing is winning the James Hardy 1000, not once, not twice, but I want to win it 6 times because Brock's won it 5 times, and I just want to be better than anyone else.
Prophetic words from Dick Johnson. There you had an opportunity to see how Dick Johnson puts his racing operation into work. We've also have the race continuing, a lot of pit activity, cars coming in and out, no one of significance that would affect the first 3 or 4 cars. There he is, True Blue. Down through the gears, coming back onto pit straight again. And I think we could have a pit stop on the cards for Dick Johnson. We might time that. Comes into the pit area.
Starting the clock now.
Okay, there'll be a driver change here. John French of Queensland takes over the running of the car for the second part. Doing it very orderly. They can afford to take a little extra time. At this stage, they hold quite the wood.
90 seconds when he went to the pits ahead of Gary Rogers, and a further 38 seconds call over Bob Morris.
Well, we'll spot for you whether Rogers can take over the lead while Johnson is in fact in the pits.
Well, the driver change has been completed. Another churn of fuel. Coming up 50 seconds. Consultation with the pit boss. Oh, look at that activity down pit road.
That's number 35, I think, that's causing all the problem down there.
That's the Alexander Mazda Rotary. There's KB. Bob Forbes, I would suggest, is at the wheel.
Okay, still looking for the Rogers car to go past the pit area.
It hasn't done so yet. We're up to 1:20 in the pits for Dick Johnson. Rogers, I would think, is going to come into view very shortly.
This is an extraordinarily long pit stop. Johnson shouting instructions to the crew. They've still got it jacked up.
Still no sign of Rogers. 1:45. There's Rogers.
Okay, Gary Rogers, number 11, now goes through to take over the lead. Okay, down to Evan Green.
A really long stop here, a man under the car. Dick Johnson getting very agitated with the amounts of time going. The instructions to John French to start the motor up. They're out, they've changed. Oh, no. not ready yet. They've got one oil filler still to clap up. Now it's done. And I'm very worried, Dick Johnson. That was a long pit stop. And a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of John French now. An old hand, though. He knows what it's all about. You can see the spill oil there. Mainly from added oil. I don't know if it's an oil leak or the fact they just overfilled the car. We'll try and find that out. But that was a slow stop for Dick Johnson. I'll go over to the pit area if I can and see if I can have a word with him. He's very up there, throwing his gloves around. But let's just watch the scene here. I won't speak to him for a while. He's talking to his pit crew. You can see just in here, Dick Johnson, very agitated. He talks to the man about the time spent. He said, why were you doing that? There was no need to get that done. The man's under the car trying to fix something. They were giving warnings to John French that he's got new brakes. And it's a fairly heated discussion. Both so enthusiastic to try and win the race. An enormous amount of tension here. And Dick Johnson, whose very life is wrapped up with success in the Bathurst race, terribly concerned the amount of time that they lost in the pits. He will still hold the lead, but it's touch and go at Bathurst. The old saying still applies. You don't win them on the track, but you lose them in the pits. Dick Johnson, hair wet with perspiration. We'll bring him over to the camera now. Dick, that was a long spell at the wheel and a long spell in the pits.
Mate, that was stupid. You know, they should have just kept going. There was nothing wrong with the thing. It's only an oil leak when you stop the engine, because it's just got, on the inlet side of the oil pump, it leaks. But when it's sucking, it doesn't leak a drop. They buggerised around here and tried to fix it. Well, you know, that's just a waste of time. The rest of the car is absolutely magnificent.
Put new brake pads in?
No way. They're brand new.
What did you tell John French before he went out? Any special instructions?
I just said, look, we're only using 6.5. You can do it on your ear. I use third gear up through the cutting, the whole deal, and it's just really great.
You're in front. You'd still be in front after that stop.
I sincerely hope so.
When will you believe you've got this race won?
When we finish across the line, when that flag goes down, not before.
And until then?
Until then, who knows?
How does it feel to be in the lead when it means so much to you, Nick?
Well, we're doing it very easy, and I'm sure that French is just real easy on the car, which he always is. There'll be absolutely no problems at all. None whatsoever.
Thank you, Dick Johnson.
Just a touch of wishful thinking there from Dick Johnson, because that pit stop was 2 minutes and 20 seconds and 2 cars went through while he was in there. Gary Rogers, first of all, he's now the race leader and picking up the first of his Coca-Cola bottlers lap money. Bob Morris also went through and is in second spot ahead of John French now at the wheel of car 17, the True Blue Falcon. There is Johnson-French entry along pit straight. In third position on the track at the present time. The margin between first and second, Rogers and Morris, is 16 seconds.
We'll take a break. Return with more entertaining action in the pits and on the track. The James Hardy 1000. Bathurst, welcome back. On screen we have Bobby Morris in the number 7 Ford, heading up towards Castrol. Morris at this stage running in second in the race, 16 seconds behind the race leader Gary Rogers. And the gap between the race leader and John French in Dick Johnson's car is in fact 25 seconds.
That's between second and third.
Sorry, between second and
41
third.
seconds all up between the leader and Johnson's entry.
So that's a gap that John French is going to have to pull back in his driving stint. I don't think that they really want to stretch the car, but that's the deficit, and that's what they'll have to do if they want to take the lead back again.
Both Rogers and Morris, of course, have got that pit stop to come. But a quick stop, and then if they only take on fuel and maybe change 1 or 2 tyres, they could be in and out in 40 seconds, 45 seconds.
It's been a very strong performance, in fact, from Gary Rogers and Clive Benson-Brown. And the untried and unsorted Bob Morris having its first, Bob Morris car, number 7, having its first run in competition here this weekend. And it's running remarkably strong in second place. And, of course, the True Blue entry in third, Dick Johnson, and, of course, John French at the wheel at the moment. Another of the recar teams into the pit area at the moment. I think that's the Scotty Taylor car. It's the first time we've had a chance to see Taylor in the pits. There's Morris heading on down Conrod Straight, heading in the direction of Pitt Straight. And that car has been running remarkably strong. John Fitzpatrick at the wheel now, doing the second stint after Bob drove the first.
There are now 3 of the 6-cylinder or rotary cars in the top 10 on the track. IBM computer readout. Rogers in the lead. 76 laps. And the Commodore from Falcon and Bob Morris, car 7, Falcon and Johnson and French, car 17. And then the first of the Rotaries, Alan Moffat, car 43. The start was in Mazda. Then the Camaro. Von Dixon has been lurking in there. His car's been running extremely well. The other car in his team has been having quite a few problems and has been in and out of the pits a few times. That's the one with Graham Moore and Steve Diamond sharing the driving.
Okay, we've caught one of the little incidents up in the top part of the circuit, which we'll replay in for you in a second or two. Okay. In the dipper. Let's just have a look. Holy poly. That's the way to bend the front end on them. But anyway, couldn't pick up the driver. Was often gapping again. Back to John Fitzpatrick, co-winner here in 1976 with Bob Morris. Made a couple of visits here, teamed with Alan Moffat, of course, and had all sorts of problems. Never really got to drive last year. And the previous year, of course, was up there running strongly when the engine in the Ford expired. Okay, as we go across the Phillips scoreboard, we'll give you an update, of course, with the cars and how they are running in their various positions.
78 laps is the leading situation at the moment, and you'll find that on 78 laps we've got car 11, Gary Rogers, car 7, Bob Morris, and also car 17, John French, at the wheel of the True Blue Falcon at the moment as we pan across. 77 lap situation you won't see on your screen for a little time yet, because as we pan across we'll pick up car 43, and on the color code there in the orange bracket you'll find it about to come onto your screen now, and that's Alan Moffat's Mazda just ticking up onto the 78th lap. Peter Williamson in car 77 in the green color code there is leading the 4-cylinder class in his Toyota Celica, and he has a 3-lap call at the present stage in that class situation over car 50, which is the Alfetta GTV being driven by Gary Leggett and Phil McDonnell.
Morris heads off. We'll keep a quick check on the gap between Gary Rogers and, of course, Bobby Morris, running 1-2 at this stage.
13.96 seconds between Rogers and Morris. So Morris, in fact, is closing, because that gap just a lap or two back was about 3 seconds bigger than that.
Okay, well, Morris would be kept well aware of the situation in the pits. They don't want Rogers, who's really a cat amongst the pigeons at the moment, to get too far away from them so they can't challenge. And, of course, I think John French will be called upon to also pull back the deficit as quickly as he can. Okay, another one in the pits. This is the Joe Moore and the Christine Gibson entry. We've already dealt with Fred Gibson, who's been driving in the pit area, and who has been driving, of course, the Datsun. And Chris Gibson. And out goes that car. Quite an interesting combination. One of the fastest young ladies in motorsport. She prefers not to talk so much about her deeds in motorsport, but to get out there and drive. So Chris Gibson and Joe Moore in the Tavern entry continue with the race. Back into competition again.
Morris closing from the race leader Gary Rogers. The gap sticking down 15.97 seconds, just a couple of laps back now, down to 13.96. And with running to see just what happens with that gap in the next few laps as the race continues. Fitzpatrick at the wheel, car 7 into the braking area.
Well, I think that gap could be coming down again, because Morris definitely appears to be making some inroads on the outright lead. Gary Rogers just heading up Mountain Straight up towards Castrol at this very moment. And John Fitzpatrick a little tail happy there as he got through Hell Corner and heads up in the direction of the race leader. So they're not separated by too much at all. Gary Rogers in the Commodore and Bob Morris in second.
Tailing Fitzpatrick up the mountain, but about 100 metres astern of him is 0.5. Peter Brock, but of course Brock about 9 laps down on the leader situation.
Okay, let's go to the pit area, Evan Green, and hopefully we might even have a little chat with Chris Gibson.
In the pits after a very hot spell on the wheel, Christine Gibson. How's it out there, Christine?
Oh, it's fine. I enjoyed the drive for the first time all weekend. The car's going just as well as it started, I'm sure. There's not a problem with it. I shouldn't be saying these sort of things.
Now, you were telling me before the race that your car, which is Falcon number 20, had a problem in that it didn't have enough tyres, or certainly not the right tyres. What have you done to overcome that?
Well, we've begged, borrowed and stole a couple. We've got enough to get us through using a couple of worn rear ones, which we hope will get us through to the end of the race. We're pretty right. We think actually, the tyre wear is very low today, even though it's fairly warm, but it's the tyres are pretty good. They're not wearing.
You've been running in Bathurst since, 1968. Can you remember a race where so many of the leaders were going out?
No, it was unbelievable this morning. In most years, at least 3 or 4 of the first 5 are still there at the end, And this year, I can't believe that they were swapping around so much. And it was such a hard race. I mean, that first 10 laps was just a sprint.
Christian, you have 2 young daughters. Where are they today?
They're watching Mum. They should be at home waving on the television. I was supposed to wave and say hello, you see.
How old are they?
They're 6 and 4.
Well, you give a message, and when you finish, it's back to Mike Raymond.
Hello, darlings, and I'll be home first thing in the morning.
Thank you very much, Chris. The young lady of motorsport and young mother of motorsport too, and she's done a tremendous job. Okay, the race continues. There's our race leader. He follows through. Bob Morris is closing, and so too is Johnny French. So there's more action to come when we come back live to Mount Panorama of Bathurst. The big point about it is the fact that the gap between Gary Rogers and second place Bobby Morris is now down to about 11 seconds. So there's not too much between them. And the gap also back to John French is also diminishing. So second place Bobby Morris and third place John French are certainly gaining on our race leader Gary Rogers. They've done a fine job. One of the best turned out Commodores here at Bathurst, running very, very smoothly indeed. Not being overdriven, conservatively driven by Gary Rogers and Clive Benson-Brown. Getting over the top of the mountain, being waved, of course, and we have another one of the Marshall's cars on the course. There wasn't too much on that, let me tell you. Swinging over the top of the mountain, and I think that at this stage Gary would be well aware. Looks like Albert Sims Scrap Metal Yard and the collectors at the top of the mountain. Okay, Gary Rogers swinging down through the S's. Fans up there, particularly the Ford fans, warming to the idea of 2 Fords coming up to challenge the Commodore. In the lap leader contest, of course, that are sponsored by Coca-Cola bottlers, Ingersoll Rand, the Dick Johnson-John French combination have already picked up $2,800. The Bartlett-Forbes combination, $850, and Rogers and Benson Brown, $350. Peter Brock, of course, with $100 for the early position. So those positions courtesy of IBM at 1:20, so we're 1 minute up on our update. Okay, heading down Conrod Straight, still out in front, Gary Rogers and the Launceston Hotel car. Well, of course, the fortunes of many drivers, the unsung heroes. Last year, I think it was Paul Golson who came into contention in third place late in the race. Golson, of course, started in the race, was ready to hand his car over to the American driver Rodney Combs, but it expired almost in the same way that Alan Jones did. So the expensive international co-drivers have been forced once again to sit on the sidelines because a few of the cars haven't gone the distance required to even get the co-drivers a start. That's bad luck indeed, because particularly in Combs' case, he was as quick as Golson. Okay, the gap again is now down to 9.64 seconds, so it has come down from 14, 12, 11, and now 9.64. So John Fitzpatrick is starting to haul in the race leader, Gary Rogers. Rogers at this stage hasn't put a foot wrong. He's driven the car well. Won't take too long before you can catch sight of our second place, Bobby Morris. And not far back behind them, of course, is our third place driver on the road. And that is John French, co-driver to Dick Johnson. Okay, he swings across the top of the mountain, still leading in the index of performance, which of course is sponsored by Channel 7, $5,000 to the car or drivers who registered the best performance on handicap, and still being led by Alan Moffat and Derek Bell in the Mazda RX-7. In second place is the Celica of Williamson and Smith, and in third place, Rogers and Benson Brown. Okay, let's go for an update in the pits with Evan Green.
Our race analyst, John Shepherd, is a highly technical man, but it seems he's been delving into the realms of superstition. You've come up with some interesting facts, John.
It's really intriguing, Evan. We've got Peter Brock told me before, this is his 13th Bathurst, so he obviously thinks he's in a lot of trouble. Bobby Morris has got all the facts and figures together the way they were in 76 when he won the race. It's his birthday again today, and that's what it was in 76. Bob Jane was just telling me before, he found 7 5-cent pieces in the workshop one by one, so that's an omen. He's got them glued on the dash of the car, so it's really Superstitionville today.
Well, Bob Jane, everyone knows Peter Brock's won the race 5 times, but this race, which had its origins 21 years ago in the Armstrong 500 of Phillip Island, has been won 4 times by people, including yourself. And today you might be in the role of being behind a winning car, because Bob Morris and John Fitzpatrick are going very well.
Yeah, well, they're looking very good there. Gary Rogers in front at the moment, and our car's picking him up about 2 seconds a lap. So we figure that Bobby's car will be in front in about 3 or 4 laps.
Now, I think that you might be slightly superstitious, Bob, because I noticed that all the crew are wearing green hats. But notice what Bob Jane is wearing.
Oh, no, well, that's a coincidence. But, you know, we need everything going for us, Evan. A bit of superstition, a bit of good luck, and a lot of preparation.
Right. Bob Jane, by the way, keep your eye at some stage in the future on car 9. That's Kev Bartlett. I was talking to him just a few minutes ago before he went out onto the track. He said, I can't win the race, but I can break the lap record. And Kevin Bartlett, the man who was the first in a single-seater to do a lap here at 100 miles an hour, has that target firmly in his sights after the disappointments earlier today. So watch KB in 9. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thanks very much, Evan. We pick up as we follow the cars going through the top of the mountain, that gap that still keeps coming down between Gary Rogers and Bobby Morris. And Rogers now finds himself in amongst a lot of traffic at the top of the mountain, in behind one of the Masterton Team Capri cars. He'll try and swing out and rid himself of being caught behind there, so he can keep Morris at bay. Okay, swinging across. Let's have a look now, courtesy of IBM, as an update of the top 10 positions. In Commodore number 11, Gary Rogers and Benson Brown, on 84 laps completed, they lead the race narrowly from the Falcon number 7, Bob Morris and John Fitzpatrick. In third position is Dick Johnson and John French presently at the wheel. And surprise, in fourth place, outright, is the Mazda number 43 of Alan Moffat and Derek Bell, soon to come into the pits. In fifth place, the Camaro 21 for Barbecues Galore, for Ron Dixon and Bob Stevens. Position number 6, the Commodore number 4, the recar entry of Alan Brown and Tony Edmondson. In seventh position, the Falcon number 20, Joe Moore and Christine Gibson. In eighth position, the Falcon number 18 of Murray Carter and New Zealand's Graham Lawrence. In ninth place is the Commodore, the recar entry of Ron Wanless and Ralph Radburn. And in 10th place, outright, the Capri number 33 for Masterton Holmes of Steve Masterton and Stewart. That's our top 10 as we follow through with the race, and particularly with our leader. Well, that gap keeps changing. It certainly won't change in our commercial break. We'll take a break and come back live to the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst. Well, welcome back to Mountain Panorama. And as you can see, the pit stop of the race, Alan Moffat has just stepped out of the car, is now trying to help Derek Bell strap down. Moffat, as you know, is a fairly agitated man when it comes to pit stops. I think they've got the Mazda running. Very, very quick pit stop. And Derek Bell the co-winner with Jackie X at Le Mans this year, tries to get the Mazda RX-7 to fire. That doesn't take any trouble, and the Peter Stuyvesant International Challenge is off and running, looking for an outright at Bathurst this year. So Derek Bell is off and taken over the controls of the Moffat car, which has been running with that snapped front spoiler. They didn't even worry about that during the pit stop. And Moffat can now rely upon a man of great experience in Derek Bell. There's Alan Moffat, a little on the distraught side. He absolutely puts everything into his racing. I think he would be fairly happy with the situation at the moment. Okay, so Bell now goes back to join the race. The gap between Bob Morris and Gary Rogers is still around. I'm sorry, between Bob Morris and number 17, which of course is the Dick Johnson John French car, is 17 seconds. Okay, take it away, Gary, with Alan Moffat.
A very quick pit stop and the scent of victory, I think, in Alan Moffat's nostrils. Derek Bell now in the car, Alan, and you must be very happy.
He's going like a Pan Am jet, mate.
You're leading the class, you're leading the index of performance, and you're right on the heels of the outright situation.
Okay, well, perhaps let's hope we keep her going. She's going great. Derek will take a couple of laps to settle down, but it really is running fine. We're very happy with it, and seem to be able to get a bit of a lead on some of the slower cars across the top. When the spoiler came up, I think we lost a bit of speed on the straightaway, but we just took it up another couple of RPM, and that seemed to work out all right.
I was going to say, it's silly to ask you if you've got any complaint about the car. Obviously not.
No, it's stopping well. The tires seem to be working fine. You have to nurse them just a little bit, but I'm very happy. And I think when you can get to the halfway mark and be in a situation like we are, then the others better be running real well in another couple of hours' time.
Were you able to take in any of the dramas concerning the other front runners in the early stages?
Well, I don't know what happened to Peter Brock. The only car that's passed me has been the blue one.
Okay, things are running well. But our fingers crossed and hope they continue that way.
Keep up the drinking back home there.
Alan Moffat smiling in the pits.
Okay, thank you, Gary, and Alan Moffat, who grants a rather amazing interview stepping from the car and manages to get the plugs rolling within 30 seconds. Okay, there's Derek Bell settling himself into the car. He'll be able to keep the pace up after a couple of laps without too many problems at all. Meanwhile, Bobby Morris still leads the great race for 1981, James Hardy, as Derek Bell comes down under brakes of this remarkable car. Moffat had hoped to run here last year, but it's running now, peripheral ported version, and shows most assuredly it is a front-running car in long-distance races, everyone knows, overseas. Evan Green has had a very, very busy time in the pits this morning. He's come back to join us now. Evan, your feelings of the race thus far?
Because they've had, the Holden dealer team have had troubles with both their cars, which has caused a certain feeling of stunned disbelief there. Even the special tuning Gemini they ran broke an axle, so that's out of the event. It's been a disastrous day as far as they're concerned, although Jim Richards is still circulated in magnificent fashion, the fastest man on the track, but a long way behind.
Of all the years you've been to Bathurst and all the races that you've seen previously, have you ever seen a race like the race that we had for the lead in the opening laps?
Oh, I've seen a couple of close ones, I suppose, but never one at the velocity that those guys are doing, or with the ferocity of it as well. If not quite leaning on each other all the time, doing it occasionally. And there's another visit to the pits by the rusty French Falcon, which has been a fairly frequent, almost constant visitor there. Leo Leonard, the New Zealand driver, a very good driver from New Zealand, does well in there, equivalent to the James Hardy 1000. That is the Benson and Hedges touring car race there. He's a man who's won that 4 or 5 times, but they're not going to win today. They've had a lot of trouble with the John Sands. Very well presented Falcon, but you can see there, Rusty very disappointed. He just pushes the car out again, car number 6. It's been such a busy time down there. I'm still breathless from the exertion of running up and down pit row.
Okay, another one going out, of course, that we've just mentioned. The race continues with Bobby Morris. What a remarkable tale this has been so far to come through the field. Sat off the pace a little in the opening laps of the race and has managed to now, through pit work, good and bad, on some other teams to take over the lead.
It'll be a great great victory for them, not only because both Bobby Morris and John Fitzpatrick are a popular pair here, but a remarkable achievement. I can't think of a new car succeeding in its first outing at Bathurst. It's a very testing circuit. If anything is wrong with the car, it's going to find it out. A tremendous credit to the man who built the car, George Shepherd.
Yes, a very good man too.
I know George well. He used to navigate for me. He's a very methodical, thorough sort of bloke. He was saying that when he went, was given the job 6 weeks ago of preparing the car, he went to quite a few other specialists and forwards and said, they all told him so many lies. But he just had to forget the lot. And with the exception of Fred Gibson, he said he was pretty good. Fred used to drive forwards with him. But he had to do it all himself. And it's a remarkable achievement if the car is going so well. Just as the Alan Moffat car is doing exceptionally well. There's the Bob Morris car, John Fitzpatrick driving. I wonder whether the viewers really are aware of the very high calibre of some of the co-drivers who are taking part. We've got John Fitzpatrick with all those rocks on the track on the outside. Goodness me, there are plenty of rocks here waiting for Queensland drivers to edge their way this year, aren't there?
Well, there certainly are. We've seen a lot of it. We have that gap still coming back between John French and Bob Morris. They're still hard at it.
The same about John Fitzpatrick. Now, he is a professional race driver, and he's, I think, been racing Porsches, the 935 models, which are even more fearsome machines than the Falcon is pedaling at the moment. Much more powerful, probably as much as twice the horsepower of this car, and he runs them in the IMSA events and other long-distance classics there. He's had a couple of wins this year. That's Joe Moore in the Falcon that he and Christine Gibson are running, the one on the second-hand borrowed and begged tyres that Christine was talking about. And John Fitzpatrick says, I spent a weight behind. A, if I try and pass Joe Moore, I might have trouble, and B, if I get by him, I'll show you, I might get a free feed at the tavern when he runs. So he's staying back and chooses a very circumspect time to pass. He'll get by. He should have the legs on the straight. And a very wise old head is that fitted to the youthful body of John Fitzpatrick. I knew young John when he came to Australia. I brought him out for BMC in 1964. Young John wanted to be a professional golf player, so don't play golf with him. But he's still good. And he came out, Paddy Hopkins was in the team those days, said, you know, John was driving with him. This young John, the 18-year-old from England, Paddy, who had just won the Monte Carlo Rally, had an enormous reputation, said, let young John drive, he's better than I am. And John Fitzpatrick's been better than a lot of people for the last 20-odd years.
Okay, let's pick up on number 62 as it swings through. That's Alexandra Serpil. She hasn't been doing bad at all. Running quite strongly out there.
The car is entry. The car is the one that Peter Williamson ran for Mike Quinn a couple of years ago. It's the Corolla Levin, which is an interesting little car. It's the Corolla body, but it has the 1.6-litre twin-cam engine, and they sell it as Levin overseas. We don't get them here, but it is a production model that's quite popular in Japan and in America. A potent little car. Alexandra's done very well in this. She did astonishingly well in the CRC 300 at Amaroo Park, finishing 10th outright. And she won her class for 1,600cc cars at Oran Park, so she's having a good season.
Well, she's done very well. She's settled down.
Every picture tells the story. You know, it's stopped, and I don't know what's wrong with it. Car number 63, one of the escorts, with the driver waving his arms. It's the Cherry City Ford. John Faulkner and Gary Dumble are the drivers. And it's the Cherry City car, I think, has just fallen from the tree. It's
well, we have a... We had lost Wigston down in the bottom corner. There was some oil on the track there, as you can see, as the Army Muir car went through in the two recars. Okay, he went it for the protection of the Armco, left the car out there. Then, of course, we took you for a drive with Alan Grice. The car, of course, was then handed over to David Hobbs during the course of the event. The car was very, very competitive up in the top 6. But they were to have problems when Alan Grice, of course, put it in the sand dunes down at the end of the straight. Then the little Japanese driver who had to ask directions. He couldn't make himself understood and figured out the only way back to the pits was to go and repair the car and go chase himself, which he did. And it was a long sprint back, which proved he was fairly fit.
A long trip back with a battery in his hands, too. That was all he needed. Oh, another one there, Mike.
Yes, we lost a few up subjects of the guardrail, and this was the critical pit stop that Dick Johnson wanted to complete without too much drama. Mechanics overseered it, thought there was an oil leak. Johnson pressured them not to. There was a driver change effective here as John French stepped into the car. Dick Johnson became most agitated with his own pit crew, and then, of course, went on to criticise them that they were being a little overprotective of the situation. That put them a fair way back, and now it's been up to the very capable John French to make the gap back. Number one on Bob Morris, and then, of course, later on Gary Rogers.
I was making the point a while ago about co-drivers, and an enormous burden rests on the shoulders of John French because he has to maintain the speed that Dick Johnson was doing. And you'll see some instances where the co-driver just doesn't have the skill of the lead driver. A good example, I think, is Clive Benson-Brown, who's taken over from Gary Rogers in the Commodore. He's not as quick as Gary, hasn't got the same experience, so he's under a very difficult assignment there to keep the car in one piece and keep reasonably competitive. But you've got, with Bobby Morris, a co-driver of the calibre of John Fitzpatrick, who really is good enough to drive number one for anyone in the world. And you've got Alan Moffat in car 43. We saw, they're not Alan Moffat driving at the moment, but Derek Bell, who normally has the crowd jumping on tiptoes down through the S's because he is supremely sensational down through there. And Derek Bell won Le Mans this year. Now, that's the world's greatest sports car race. And here's this man who's won that race twice, co-driver to Alan Moffat. So there was a very high calibre of driver. We've got Jimmy Richards out there for Peter Brock and lapping at the moment in the fastest times of the race to try and get back some of the time that they lost. And they are thrashing that car. They've got nothing to lose, and I suspect not much to win. But they're out to make the point. Kevin Bartlett, who had Bob Forbes, a very capable co-driver, vastly underrated, has the best finishing record of any top driver here at Bathurst. And Bobby Forbes had a good spell in the car, hopeless, of course. Kevin Bartlett's got out, he's trying to crack the 100-mile-an-hour lap, and that'd be worth watching. If he doesn't crack the lap, he'll crack something else. And there might be a small car that gets in his way, because KB's in the really let's get up and eat 'em mood. And Alexandra Surplus, going around very well. She has with her Doug, what's his name, that well-known character from Gosford, who Doug Clark, who won the 2-litre class last year in the Chickadee Chicken Saliga, driving with Alexandra Surplus. So that's a good team. And John Fitzpatrick down at the bottom of the straight, taking a very smooth line. John's about to go into business as a racing car constructor. He now lives in California, going to build his own Porsches, special tubular frame versions of the 935. And John knows what it's all about. And another man who maybe can tell us what it's all about is Gary Wilkinson in the pits.
Thank you very much, Evan. And of course, the car we're watching on the way up Mountain Straight at the moment is car 7, the Bob Morris, John Fitzpatrick Falcon. Fitz is in the car at the moment, and I've got Bobby Morris over here with me in the pits, and you've got a big smile on your face.
Well, we're in front now, and John French is catching us, but John's doing a good job out there. The car's going very well. There are no problems with it, and all we can do is keep it poking around and see what happens with Johnson.
Gary Rogers came in for a pit stop and a driver change with Clive Benson-Brown taking over, and I noticed they had a slight trouble there. Jack seemed to get stuck under the car, held them up for a few seconds, so that was to your advantage as well.
Well, we didn't really rate them as a contender, even though they were technically leading on the road, because they were just coming in for their second stop, and we'd already had ours. And we don't think that Clive Benson-Brown is actually an experienced enough Bathurst driver to go fast enough and keep the pace.
Fitz obviously is an experienced enough Bathurst driver.
Well, he is, and you know, he and I have won this race before, and if all goes well, we'll win it again.
Bob, in the early stages of the race, I mean, you've always been known as a real charger, a real front runner, but today you seem deliberately be prepared to sit back and just let that action go in front of you.
Well, I thought it was a 1,000-kilometre race. It's ridiculous being mixed up, trying to lead every lap, when we could just hold them in sight, drive the car, what I thought was at a sensible pace, and sort it out later on in the day.
Well, the car, are you surprised that it is going as well as it is, considering the lack of racing to the track?
Well, I'm pleasantly surprised, but George Shepherd has prepared this car, and he's looked at every small nut and bolt, and it's taken quite a few months to prepare, and unfortunately we were held up for some vital components, and we didn't test the car until late last week. So we virtually brought the car here untested.
With more than half the race completed now, obviously conditions are changing out on the circuit. There's rubble, there's rubber, there's all sorts of things that Fitz must be watching out for in certain parts.
Well, this is why we have to have such an experienced driver in John Fitzpatrick to keep the car on the road, because the road is very slippery. There are cars that are blown up, there's oil, there's debris from accidents, and it takes a driver of Fitz's calibre and experience to avoid all the problems that are on the road.
So the big danger, as far as you're concerned now, still Dick Johnson and possibly Moffat in the RX-7?
John French, I believe, is catching us slightly. At our next pit stop, I may get back in the car and do the next 2 sessions, which is a fair bit of driving. I'm not terribly looking forward to that. But we're going to put some new tyres on the car. We didn't put tyres on at the last stop. They're wearing very well. They're Dunlop tyres. And the car's flying.
Well, the word is that you've got a 10-second margin at the present time over French in the True Blue Falcon. So you better get out there and just cheer Fitz on for a few laps until you can take over again.
Well, 10 seconds is not much in 3.5 hours, so it's neck and neck. And I'm glad to see it's 2 Fords up there. The Holdens couldn't hack the pace today, and unfortunately the Camaro had its problems, but the Mazda's still hanging in there. I think it's a fair margin behind, but it looks like an outright contender.
Well, 10 seconds the gap. That's the closeness of the racing. That was Bob Morris, and we'll be back shortly with more of the action from Mount Panorama.
Computer system here, so let's punch up the 4-cylinder class and take a look at who's leading.
Peter Williamson, John Smith in the Toyota Celica car 77. They have a long lead, as you can see, over the next car in the class. That's the Brian Foley entered Alfa Romeo Alfetta, Gary Leggett, a particularly good driver here in terms of his record at Bathurst, and Phil McDonald, the Gemini of Jim Finico, and one of the Goff brothers, who temporarily won the class a couple of years ago, then had taken away under protest. And then Alexander Surplus with Doug Clark, Mr. What's-His-Name from Gosford, in 4th place in that category, but a fair gap between the laps, as you can see. 86 plays 79 as far as the Corolla is concerned. Then the Lancer, Stevens and Bradkey. The Escort, the first of 6 Escorts in the race originally, but way back in the field, all of them, the Mulville and Nightingale, and Ray Cutchy with Farah in Escort, number 61, running back there 72 laps, a long way behind the leading car in that class. That's the IBM report on the 4-cylinder class.
Okay, well, we've been following Peter Williamson around. I think it might be timely to step back in and take a look. Johnny Smith, of course, is the co-driver, and it's John who's at the wheel at the moment as they head once again up Mountain Straight in the direction of GTX Bend. We can't clean the windscreen for you at home, but still a good picture as he heads up the hill in the direction of BP Cutting.
This is the steepest part of the circuit. The grade is 1 in 6.8, which you can walk up, but it's pretty steep. You can see that's the pitch where it's steep and tight. A little bit of a bump there where cars, particularly those with a very rigidly set suspension, bounce around. Now John will go out really wide. John is the Australian Formula 2 champion this year, letting our other camera car go by. David Hobbs in the BMW 635. So it's a twin-cam Japanese car, fuel injection, versus an overhead cam German fuel-injected car. The 6 cylinders of the BMW pull away from the 4 cylinders of the Toyota, as it should. It's got another 1.5 litres of capacity. Let's see how they go through the bends. David Hobbs was saying he doesn't like it down here. He hasn't had much practice, doesn't know it as well as the pair driving the Toyota. John Smith, Formula 4 champion, and former Formula 4, but Formula 2 champion. Pretty good at going through the bends, but not catching David Hobbs. In fact, Hobbs is pulling away, but as you can see, Hobbs might like it, but they're pulling me. He's going quickly, isn't he?
Very much so.
He's got a slow because he's got a car right in front of him. Now he takes a wide line out, brushes the Valvoline paint off the fence, and goes down Conway. That might be almost the last we can clearly distinguish of the beautifully painted black and gold BMW. It's disappeared out of sight for a moment behind the Dolomite that we're about to engulf. I hope you do pull out and pass him properly, Jim. What are you going to do? Go up the... That's better, John, rather. He had me so frightened there, I got his name confused. I thought he was going to pay a visit to the spare wheel.
That's a bit of drafting, but that's ridiculous.
Well, the idea is to get as close to the car in front as possible. There's a little bit of suction there, or certainly low pressure, then you pull out at the last minute. Maybe John was doing something else. He might have been listening to the commentary. I don't know where he can join in with us, but he's busily braking at the moment down to the 100 marker, now in tight. Knows there's a sand trap there because 2 cars have been stuck. The really tragic case was when Alan Grice put the BMW there, very openly admitted it was his own mistake, just went wide, tried to pass a car when maybe he shouldn't have got stuck. The other one I should mention, the Tasmanian entry of Garth Weekson. In practice yesterday in the wet twice, Garth had the melancholy distinction of spinning television cameras throughout Australia in the wet. Today he spun off into the sand, but it wasn't for the same reasons. I was talking to him afterwards, the engine had seized. He'd either seized a piston by the sound of it, a valve had dropped and caused the piston to seize, and with the engine inoperative and the car locked up, he spun into the sand. So not Garth Weekston's fault. And a sad end to a very fast and very talented driver in Australia who hasn't any real reason to look back on Bathurst 81 this year with a great deal of pleasure. The right arm signalling which way the John Smith-driven Toyota should pull. Once again up the hill, the hard part. goes towards the cutting. You've got to swing round to the left. Keep to the left because there are a lot of rocks on the right-hand side. A rock like those, which you probably didn't pick up clearly,
Can you pick me up?
was one that put John Harvey out of the race when he was running in a strong second place going down the mountain. Picked up a sharp stone that deflated the tyre, put him across the road, bounced into the path of Graham Bailey in the Chickadee Chicken Saleek and put both of them out of the race. Two very unhappy drivers.
Willow, I can hear them. I don't know whether they can hear me.
Okay, can you hear us, Johnny Smith?
Can you hear us there, John Smith? It's Evan Green here. Are you receiving us?
Okay.
I'm not sure whether he's hearing us or not. The microphone is certainly opening. Let's hope he remembers that he's speaking to a few million people around Australia and not just to his pit as he takes the car down through the S-bends.
Can you hear me, Channel 7?
Yes, Johnny Smith, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
That's Mike Raymond, Johnny.
G'day, Mike. How's it going?
Not too bad. We're a little smoother than you are at the moment, so we'll let you get through there.
Well, I got my hands full a bit, but it's good to come back. The car's going like a rocket, Mike.
You must be pleased in leading the class, John.
Sorry?
You must be very pleased leading the class.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got a fair old lead in the class at the moment. I have a little bit of trouble with the gearbox, but that's about the only thing. I reckon this little car's bulletproof.
What sort of problem do you have with the gearbox?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with fourth gear. That's about the only problem I'm having. So I'm just missing fourth gear most of the time and just grabbing third. But other than that, the car's great.
Where does it affect you? Where can you avoid using fourth?
Sorry, Mike, I've got a very bad one. I'll see if I can play with the radio a little bit.
As though he hasn't got enough on his mind at the moment, he's going to play with the radio.
Right, that's better.
It's better, all right, but you put us off air, I think, as far as the picture is concerned. That's better. We've got you back again now.
Sorry, hang on, I'll just get up a bit. Just get a little bit busy here for a second.
Yeah, don't apologise. You've got more to do than we have at the moment, I suspect. Well, let me put it another way. It's a bit more drastic if you make a mistake.
Okay, now you've got a straightaway, John. Where's fourth gear giving you the greatest problem?
I'm sorry, Mike. I'm just going up the mountain straight now. The car's going extremely well. There we go.
Well, now, you may have seen John there, went straight from third up to fifth gear, had to dodge fourth, so it's up mountain straight that he can't use it, where he could do with it, because that's a hard pull, and he will be losing just a second or two up there, because that fourth would have been a critical one. Back into third now, as you can see, as he goes fighting around XL Bend up towards the cutting. He may pick up second here in a while. We'll just see as he goes through the steepest part of the circuit. Looks like he's going for a handbrake there. I don't think he's doing a handbrake turn. Or maybe he's got John French's habit. There he is, back into second. John French, who's driving in the Dick Johnson car, takes food and eats as he drives along. Has a bit of a picnic. I think that John Smith, though, is a little bit too busy to indulge in such French-like pastimes.
Yes, hello. Come back, mate.
John Smith talking to his pit at the moment.
Mate, okay.
Just a conversation between John Smith, the driver, and Peter Williamson, who's now sitting in the pits. A very good style, almost a classic style there, hands on the wheel, about the, as you can see, the 10 to 2 position. Flame-proof driving gloves, those very bulky gloves, in case there's a fire in the car. Slight blackout. Bear in mind that the picture is transmitted from a unit in the back of the car through the back window, and a second helicopter has to be flown above. And when you get those occasional patches, the blurred view like that, or distortion, it's because the helicopter pilot has got himself and the car slightly out of alignment, say under a tree like that. It's extraordinary flying by the pilot to get right above in the clear zone where the picture is being beamed. And just remember that the speed that he's driving and over this difficult course, there's a man above him in a helicopter flying exactly the same path to bring you this picture. The path then is beamed from the helicopter to a land signal base in Bathurst and then relayed back through the normal system.
John, Mike Raymond again, if you can hear me. He got swept off the road then when Bob Morris went past. Actually, you might stay because you can see how quickly that little Toyota can, under brakes, get back on level terms with the V8. But as soon as you get one open straight away, whoom, he's off and run. Just 1 second, we'll try and see if we can establish contact. Okay, Johnny, it's Mike Raymond again. Can you read me?
Yes, I can just hear you, Mike. I haven't got a real good earpiece in my helmet, but I can pick you up all right.
That's okay. How disconcerting is it being a commentator and trying to race a car?
Oh, well, I'm no Willow, that's for sure. And
I'm never used to racing my sort of cars. You never get a chance to have someone plug a microphone and a speaker into your helmet. So it's a little bit disconcerting in the middle of a corner or something.
Okay, well, we're following you up Mountain Straight. We expect the Johnson car, yes, and of course the race leader is still Bobby Morris. So we'll let you get back to racing. Thanks very much for your time.
And a very close battle going on for that lead that you mentioned, Mike Raymond, because the gap between those two leading cars, John Fitzpatrick in car 7 and John French in car 17, has now shriveled down to only 3.8 seconds. So John French, the maybe underrated Queensland driver who's been driving here ever since Bathurst was invented, I'm sure, is catching the very highly rated international driver, John Fitzpatrick, and at the rate of several seconds a lap. Gary Leggett car there following Alan Moffat through. And then getting out of the way in case any other faster cars are coming. He can see a Commodore there who'll have more pace up the hill, so Leggett puts the lovely Alfetta over to one side, takes an awkward line for himself, and the Commodore sweeps by.
Okay, we've still got plenty of interest going with Dick Johnson's co-driver, John French, still closing a little bit by a little bit on the race leader, Bobby Morris. Okay, we'll take a break and return with more interesting action from Mount Panorama at Bathurst. Camaro still out there and running in contention. It's the number 21 Camaro that we pick up coming down into pit straight. Ron Dixon and Bob Stevens for barbecues galore, and they've got good reason to rejoice. They've been running strongly all day.
They've really got the fire going there, I say. It looks like Bob Stevens driving the car. It's a left-hand drive car, and Bob's very experienced in driving big cars, running things like Mustangs and so on. This wouldn't be a problem to him. You know, the Camaro's a huge car by implication, but it's not the biggest car in the race in terms of engine capacity. That honour belongs to the Falcons. They're 5.8 litres and a good 25 cc's bigger than the engines running in the Chev Camaros. They're a lower car and you know, not as bulky as the Falcons, but they are a heavy car.
This is certainly carrying a lot more handicap in terms of weight.
That's right.
Well, there's Ron Dixon. He's had problems. It goes to show the problems that Bartlett had earlier. The four-wheel discs have solved a lot of problems for the Camaro drivers at this circuit.
Oh, Kevin was so annoyed after that incident when he was hit by another car. He came into the pitch, he really was looking for some other hit. Calmed down, thankfully, and he calmed down even more when he found the man he was going to hit had been a professional boxer. He had the sense to change his mind very quickly. But he was talking to Peter Jansen, who was, for a while, very, very upset over the fact that they were out of the race. And Peter could spare time from his own sadness to say to KB what a terrible thing it was. He happened to be behind in the front row of the theatre that witnessed the spectacle of Bartlett being hit by the other car. And he was commiserating with him and saying he was very lucky to have survived it, because that's one of those things where a moment of danger arrives and two cars do touch. And Kevin now is out of any winning chance, but he's still out there and hopefully going to try and go for the 100-mile-an-hour mark. But the track is so bad with the debris left from various wrecks. There's oil on the track, there's a lot of rubber on the track, and there's a lot of traffic on the track, all moving at different speeds, and it would be an extraordinary achievement if Bartlett were able to set a lap record at this stage. And there's the Ron Dixon, Bob Stevens car just coming up upon one of the two John Sands 3MP Racing Falcons. This is Rusty French with the New Zealander Leo Leonard at the wheel. Interesting to see how they go, because the Falcons are bigger in total capacity. And I think the Ron Dixon car may be a little longer in its legs. It's just tucking in behind at the moment. And under some danger arriving, as these two cars will have to pass another, so they'll have to keep their eyes open. No problem. The slow car keeps to the left. They thunder by on the right. And now we'll see if Stevens can make his mark. He's certainly just overhauling the French car. Brakes will be interesting, though. I think he'll go deeper. Bob Stevens, the head tilted back in a fairly characteristic pose.
Okay, we're picking up now from Terry Lee in the 7 chopper to Bob Morris, our outright race leader in the Channel 7 Bob Jane car. He's coming up to try and overtake Murray Carter, number 18, as they swing through. Now, not far behind, you will notice in a moment or so, here he comes out of the blue, passing one of the Camaros. I think on the outside is John French.
Murray Carter just being disposed of. I was speaking to Murray before the race, one of the most popular people in motorsport. Had the misfortune to lose time in the pits with a fan belt guy of all things. They had to change the belt. It was a pretty hot sort of process and meant taking a few things apart. But John Fitzpatrick at the wheel of Bobby Morris's car, being overhauled by John French in car 17. Dick Johnson, the true blue Falcon from Queensland. So it's Falcon versus Falcon, and only a couple of seconds between. Our timer shows about 3 seconds, so it's a really close scrap in this James Hardy 1000.
Well, I think we have a very interesting race to follow. the closing stages are going to be really something. We've got John Fitzpatrick in the car at the moment. And, of course, the team driver for Dick Johnson, John French. You can see back just behind him, not that far away. And he's closed on him from 14 seconds to 12, 10, down to 5, now down to, I think, less than 4 seconds.
In fact, it's 2.68 seconds by our timing as they went by the Nick. John French, you can just see the very blue-blue looking Falcon coming in there. Looks like something you dip in the laundry. As he goes sweeping around the bend, you'll see him following up there. John French has driven a lot of different cars here. Used to be a works driver for BMC and drove around in Minis, and he switched to Alfa Romeo. He was at the wheel of one of those, and he was involved in that enormous accident way back in the late 60s when almost a third of the field were eliminated on the first lap. John French hit Bill Brown, who was the first to go, and John rolled an Alfa Romeo upside down and 4 times was hit by other cars as he lay in the middle of the track. He said the inside of the body shield kept getting shorter and more cramped, and he waited till all the noise stopped and then crawled out, and there were 19 cars involved in that crane. Well, John French, after all those years, here with a real winning chance, he's just following now behind John Fitzpatrick and showing that there's life in the old dog, the man who's been a top-line competitor here at Mount Panorama for these past 19 years, still showing that just because you're older doesn't mean you get any slower. In fact, all he's added to his pace is a lot of experience. He's been an enormous asset to Dick Johnson. John Fitzpatrick, the driver we're watching as he goes down through Forest Elbow.
I think that may will be that one pit stop is going to determine the outcome of the James Hardy, because we believe that John Fitzpatrick is due in. Our information from Gary Wilkinson in the pits is that he is due in with another couple of laps.
Well, you may remember that they made an earlier and unscheduled stop when Bob Morris, worried by what he thought was some sort of fuel surge, brought the car in earlier than they expected. And speaking to the team manager, George Shepard, he was very concerned about that because it just threw their plans out of schedule. It would mean they'll have to make one more stop. So bear in mind that the green car has to make, almost certainly, an additional stop apart from the next one. It may be very short, but it puts them at that disadvantage. Now, Dick Johnson will know that, and John French, sitting on the other end of the radio, will know it as well. So they know that they haven't got a pass to be in the lead in the race, because once John Fitzpatrick takes the car number 7, the Green Falcon, into the pits, they'll be in the lead once again.
Heading up Mountain Straight. The 2 Fords that have run so well here today in the James Hardy race. Bobby Morris, Channel 7 car. John Fitzpatrick doing the driving stint at the moment, and of course the ever-closing John French. They're probably closing only for the reason of a pit mix-up on the driver changeover. But French has played a fairly good role in this. He's been able to still conserve the car, but still make ground on the race leader, who at that time, of course, was Gary Rogers.
There's a lot of tension and distress on the pit members. There is a prizes here by the wins people, I believe, for the pit crew, which is a good thing to see. Remember last year in the James Hardy 1000, or the Hardy Ferodo, as it was then called, where the ultimate winner, Peter Brock, having been involved in an incident with another car on the top of the mountain where his car was damaged, came in an unscheduled stop, and because the car was a bit bingled in the front and began to steam just as he idled in the pits, his crew automatically thought he'd damaged the radiator and started to work on the engine. And Peter and there was thumping the steering wheel, saying there's nothing wrong with it. You know, he just wants to get the mudguard pulled out. And they did work that he thought was unnecessary and gave him and Jim Richards an enormous task to get back on and win the race, which they did. Well, the same sort of thing may have happened to Dick Johnson. Dickie came in. There was an oil leak there, which didn't matter. He knew it. He was in the car, and he knew when the motor was running, it was sucking the oil up. But the pool mechanic didn't know that. He gets under the car, and there he is greeted with a sight of oil cascading from the bottom of the motor. Assumes it's been happening all through the race and starts to work to fix it. Dick knows it's not needed, and therefore we had that little discussion in the pits afterwards when 2 very agitated persons, Dick Johnson, who thought he'd lost the race, and the mechanic, who thought he'd done the right thing, were having a few words. I think they're friends again now, but it does show the sort of pressure that the people in the pits work under. They don't know what's going on. The driver very often does. And it's hard for them to pass on the message. And a lot of good intentions can sometimes lead to a fairly poor result.
I think they'll only be friends when John French takes the lead back again, perhaps.
Well, there's nothing like a bit of clear sky in front of the cars to make everyone happy again. John French on the outside. It's interesting, you know, when it was known that Alan Jones was likely to be racing because of the cancellation of the US Grand Prix East, and the margin now down to less than 1.5 seconds, a margin you can see for yourself. But when it was known that Alan Jones might be available, it was suggested that he should drive with Dick Johnson, and Dick said, I've got John French. I'm very happy. I've got the best man in the business. A lot of people said, well, gee, that take loyalty too far, but I think now John French has just proven that Dick Johnson's faith was well and truly justified.
He has great ability. At this stage, John Fitzpatrick, knowing with one more stop to do, they've got the Masterton team car just popped in amongst them, holding, separating our race leader from second place, John French, at this stage, as they come towards the BP cutting. We'll follow this because this could well be the pass that determines the outcome of the race. John French. That good shot showing them coming through the mountain, coming up to lap one of the slower cars. And French is particularly fast over this part of the track. Slower car pulls over to the left, gives the front-running two drivers the opportunity to pass with safety. This is where the V8s really stretch out. That will give you some idea of the speed across the top of the mountain. And he is now getting close, really close. John French starting to dial in on John Fitzpatrick for the lead in the James Hardy Classic. Can he do it on Conrod Straight? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch them first of all to see whether there's going to be driving skill that gets past. It's Fitzpatrick versus French down through the driver's part of the section. If Fitzpatrick stays in front, it shows who's the better man. If he gets past on the straight, it shows who's got the most powerful car.
Okay, there we have it, the leader, John Fitzpatrick, and pulling out to effect passing manoeuvre is John French for Dick Johnson. Pulls down the left-hand side of the circuit. Two Ford V8s, and now we have the race lead change effected. John French goes through to take over the lead in the James Hardy.
And that trembling feeling you can see through the, or feel through the ground, is Queensland erupting. A lot of joy there, I would think, as the Queensland car gets in the lead again.
We'll wait and see if...
they're both trying hard, aren't they, yes, Mike? They both gone a little sideways, and John Fitzpatrick more than John French, I'd say.
Perhaps French has been made aware of the fact that Fitzpatrick is due in for a driver change and wants to try and put as much of a gap as he can between himself and John Fitzpatrick.
The way Fitzpatrick is wagging the tail there suggests they might be wearing their rear tyres a little bit. You know, while they've been passed, it's still a remarkable achievement that a car that has been run in only this one race is so close in second place to a car that this year won the National Touring Car Championship, has been the outstanding vehicle in motor racing, has been developed through the full year. And that's an extraordinary achievement by Bob Morris's team to have built that car and developed it so well, and to have come out and run so splendidly in their first run. I can't recall a car coming out first time up like this in private hands and doing so well.
A remarkable achievement, and I think Bob Morris made the right selection of a team driver who we've already dealt with, John Fitzpatrick, of course. Okay, over the top of the mountain, John French really starts to put some daylight between his back bumper and the front of John Fitzpatrick.
I think John Fitzpatrick got a slight handling problem. It may just be tyres, but the way he's sort of putting the tail out there suggests that he's just got a slight problem. Nothing that is too dramatic, but it does stop him from catching the flying car 17. That's an extra. Oh, isn't that a good shot? To show you the speed as John French hustles the blue car down the bends here at Panorama.
He should be able to gain another 100 or 150 metres by the completion of the next lap. And I would anticipate that John Fitzpatrick will probably be heading in the direction of the pits, perhaps for a tyre change, and certainly, we believe, a driver change.
Bob Morris will be there, and he'll be fairly agitated. Bob is one of these supreme sprinters in Australia. Gets very nervous in the pits, and he's really there, and I would imagine his feet will be itching for him to get back out. That's something he's got to be a bit wary about. There's Bob. You can see him pacing around. He's got to control himself. He can still win this race. But he's not going to win it on the next couple of laps. You can see him trying to relax the neck muscles as he's wants to get in the car and do it himself. He's got a good man out there doing it. It was John Fitzpatrick who drove that last crucial stage back in 1976 when they won the Hardy Ferrari 1000. When the very experienced Fitzpatrick nursed the car with the failing rear end across the line. Very emotional. Bob Morris had to stand in the pits and watch.
Here it comes. John Fitzpatrick. Bobby Morris at the ready. The car is currently placed second. Opened the door. He was hopping out early, but forgot all the jacks were there. Okay, Fitz climbs from the car. He's done well for the team. Okay, waves one of the mechanics over to talk about something, or assist perhaps Bob in buckling up for the next driving stint. The team is well drilled, well organised. Good to see Bob Morris back in motorsport, running in the front line. Sat out most of the season. Had a drive in the Hardy Frodo last year, but back with his own car this year. Okay, let's go trackside now to Gary Wilkinson, and hopefully he might be able to get a word with John Fitzpatrick.
Frantic activity here in the pits, taking on oil in Bobby Morris's car. Tyres also being changed. Bobby Morris is in the car. John Fitzpatrick is out. We've got to move slightly. We've got another car coming into the pits behind us. A frantic wheel change, car 7. The Morris entry having just lost the lead on the track to the French Johnson Falcon. Bob Morris, of course, now out to try and regain that situation. Tyres have changed. Morris is in the car, and he's off. Let's try and get a word with John Fitzpatrick about the situation in the car as soon as we can. A very quick discussion here with the pit crew leader, John Fitzpatrick. John, can you give us some indication how things going out there?
Car's going really well. You know, I was just driving the way they told me to. They set me a rev limit, and that's the way I was driving. The car's perfect. I just can't fault it.
You didn't make any, didn't do anything silly to try and stall off Johnson's car when he came up onto you then?
No, they were going faster. They're quite a bit faster on the straight, and there's a long way to go. It'd be stupid to try and win the race at this stage.
Is the car using a lot of oil? I noticed that they had to put some in then.
Yeah, it had used some oil, but that's the first time they're putting it in. In fact, right from when I started, the oil light was coming on braking. That was why I was going a little carefully, but it's nothing to worry about. That's the first they've put in.
Is it going well enough to outlast Johnson's car, perhaps, and win the race?
Well, I think they're quicker, and they're going to probably make one pit stop less than us, so we'll have to be very lucky to win. But the car feels good, so we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Reliability and consistency, that's what they're hoping for, Bobby Morris and John Fitzpatrick. The car back on the track and circulating as we return to Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks very much, Gary Wilkinson. Well, Bobby Morris back in number 7. We'll follow his progress back through the field and whether or not he can put the pressure on John French. We'll take a break and return trackside to more at the James Hardy 1000 from Bathurst.
Is David Hodges or is Alan Grice at the wheel? We're back at Mount Panorama, and Alan Grice we're following now in the John Player BMW number 44. Coming down in the direction of Forest Elbow. That will bring him back, of course, onto Conrod Straight, and we're hopeful of being able to have a chat with Alan Grice. We'll wait till he gets through this difficult part of the course and has the open spaces of Conrod Straight, gets through the gears and is off and running. Okay, Alan Grice, Mike Raymond. Alan?
Yes, Mike, you're coming in extremely loud.
Okay.
You're really giving me a good old fix-up in the ears, but I suppose that's motor racing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly, Alan. Well, how are things now shaping now that you're back behind the wheel? Are you making up time?
I can't hear you well, that clearly I've got plenty of interference, but on the chance that you can hear me...
Yes, we can.
I I'll just talk you around a little bit.
Yes, by all means. Go right ahead, Alan.
The car's running particularly well. You can probably see the gauges there. We just don't have a problem with the motor car, which is very comforting. Only problem's been with that that blue that I pulled down there at the end of the Conrod Straight, but the car is showing no signs of wear or tear because of it. If there was any problem, I think Hobbsy's nursed it back to life. We're just coming up behind a Capri now in third. He's waving me through. Back to third. Because we've still got a fuel load on, I'll lose second here. Just lets it help us pull up the hill. 3.5 litres is asking plenty of it. But it's as strong as a brick-built outhouse, this motor car. Gearbox still feels too new, actually. It's still feels like a brand new motor car. Here's where we go for a good ride. We're third into fourth. We're flat all the way across here. That's about 120 mile an hour. Just to back off here. Flat again. Thanks for leaning there. You led to the seat and helped me a bit. What's this bloke going to do? Didn't see me. He's the sort of bloke you want a 12 gauge for. It wasn't a problem. I think we missed him by about 3 thou. This is the one. We've got to get that one just exactly right for this run down the straight. We're into third now, into fourth, into fifth. Now this is the one where you check all your instruments over and they're still fine. We're getting up to 7 grand. I've got to just get over to the left here so the back wheels don't come off the ground, then back to the centre. There's 8 grand, off it. That's 160 mile an hour. Back to fourth, third, second. Turn left at the bloody sand trap. Wave to the pit crew so they don't feel neglected. Back to second.
Well, it's a busy life on board the BMW. Alan Grice showing he's got more talents than just driving quickly and getting out of sand slowly. This is the Gary Leggett car, the Foley-ended Alfetta. It looks like just a tyre change. They've been running second in the class behind Peter Williamson, but a fair way back. They'll need Peter Williamson to have trouble to take the class, I'd say. Just dusting off some spilt fuel there. Peter Williamson's in the pit as well. So things are really sharpening up as far as pit activity is concerned among the four-cylinder cars. There's a very rapid dash by our backpack people to go from one car to the next. Almost had a pit lane record.
Well, let's go back to Alan Grice for viewers of our Channel 7 telecast of the James Hardie 1000. Of course, this year we welcome viewers across the United States on the CBS network. And David Hobbs, of course, that we mentioned before, a broadcaster for CBS with their motorsport. We find it very, very interesting to have this discussion from Alan Grice. Alan, it's Mike Raymond again. Can you hear me?
Just caught me at a little bit of a busy time.
Sorry.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, we're just coming up on another one of these slower type Falcons. He's in a little bit of trouble down here, but our car's good down here. Couldn't stride out to the outside and try and get a run at him. Okay, Mike, can you hear me quite okay?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you, Alan. We're just following you now.
There you are. His discretion's a bit of part of valor. Still in fourth, into fifth. How am I doing, Mike? Have you got any tips for me? Have you been watching the technique?
Yes, it's been very good. I don't think I can fault any of it, Alan.
Back up here, that's 162 mile an hour. Back to fourth, third, second, a turn left at the sand trap, not in the bloody thing.
Alan, do you find this distracting, talking while you're driving?
I can't hear you terribly clearly, Mike.
That's okay. We're just interested to know whether you find doing commentary distracting while you're driving.
It sounds a little as though you're speaking from inside a bucket, Mike, but I don't think that'll be the case. Into fourth, the wave yellow flag. The marshal's car is obviously pulled out of the race. Back to third here, and second because we've still got a big fuel load. Let's lift one over the curve. I'm coming up on quite a gaggle of cars ahead. V8s and little cars that they're lapping. I'm catching a lot of them. I'm going to be pretty busy coming up shortly, I'd say. We'll pick up some of those cars as we go across the top of the mountain.
That's okay. I'm with you now, Alan. We have David Hobbs in the pits, and for viewers of CBS across the United States, perhaps David would now like to have a chat to you.
Well, I don't want to disconcert Alan too much at the moment because he's just catching up with that bunch of back markers as he comes into the braking at the end of the straight, up over this lump. There's the final crest, and just before that crest, he's going to have to brake pretty hard. And if you look closely at the ground, you'll see two long black marks, there they are, disappearing to the right down the escape road. Well, those are marks that yours truly put there 3 laps before I made my pit stop. And so Alan's got his hands full coming in there, and he's still catching up with these guys. I can't see who they are. But is the car operating okay now, Alan?
Yeah, the car's fine. It's, I don't know if you had a problem with brakes or anything after I gave you the smouldering thing, but whatever it was, you've certainly resuscitated for me. The car just hasn't got a problem. It still tends a little to lock us rear brakes up, but I left my sand iron in the pits on this occasion, so I won't do that to you again.
Well, the car was fine when I first took it over. There's a nice aerial view of you now, Alan, going through GTX, so I'm watching your line. I'm the new boy here at Bathurst, and Bathurst, sorry, and Alan, of course, has driven here many times. Coming up to the cutting, this is the slowest point for us on the course, down into second here, and it's a bit of a lug round that tight hill, and it's quite a steep hill here. But Alan, he seems to be doing it right to me. He's keeping the right line. He must have been watching footage of me in the car. This is the bit I don't like, coming up into this left dip, where Alan just gives a bit of a lift. You can hear him just come up a little bit, but he's making a lot of ground on those slower cars now. Down into second as he comes into the dipper. That's where John Harvey came unstuck earlier on in the race. Coming into the elbow now onto Conrod Straight, where Alan again is going to get up to about 160 odd miles an hour. What a gaggle of cars there. There's the Ford. He's just about to overtake that Commodore. Oop, nowhere to go. This is a sort of difficult situation for Alan to talk to us now because he's got to lap that Commodore. As you can see, he's been really using the draft. American viewers will understand that fully who are used to watching NASCAR racing. But they're both catching up with that gaggle of cars in front. These are all quite fast cars that he's passing now. These aren't the slower back markers. These are guys that Alan's having to work hard to get by. Because the next car in line is one of those Ford Falcons, which has got about another 100 horsepower. You can see the car weaving just slightly under braking there. We've got a little bit of a problem with the back brakes. As they get hot,
and become more effective, they tend to lock up just a little bit, which makes it a little bit difficult. I spun it going into this turn where he's being more circumspect as he laps that Capri. But we have a 5-speed gearbox, and it definitely helps on acceleration up that hill. If it wasn't for that, we'd be badly off because we haven't got the horsepower.
I was going to say, David, the car seems surprisingly quick to pick up after coming out of that left.
Well, it is, because we go through there in second, and so do they go through there in second, but we've got 3 gears to go, and they've only got another 2. And it does help our acceleration. GTX, he's taking a nice line through there, using up most of the road. Those 2 cars in front of him are a couple of Fords, which initially up through the cutting here should out-accelerate him.
What about the extraneous traffic on the circuit?
Well, it's very bad. I said earlier on in the broadcast when I was out in the car, I don't know whether you got it or not, that it's more like an obstacle course than a race course because that damn truck keeps coming out. And as Fitzpatrick said earlier, you know, you're caught between a rock and a hard place. You can't leave the cars out there, and yet that truck itself can become quite hazardous. And they warn pretty well. You know, there's the white flag. The marshals show the white flag, which is a slow vehicle on the course, and then they have the pace car following it slowly down the road with its flashes going. So it gives you some warning, but it is a bit dicey, especially along the top.
What's your impression of the James Hardy 1000 as a motor racing event?
I think it's tremendous. It really is an event, and I think that racing the world over has got to realise that there's more to racing than just cars. Obviously, and the James Hardy 1000 is really doing a good job. I mean, it's a proper event. There's thousands of people here. They can camp here and make a long 3-day weekend, and of course the racing is just tremendous. And this is very like American stock car racing. The viewers of CBS who are used to seeing the Daytona 500, the World 600 from Charlotte, will readily appreciate these cars, although these are even more stock than those. I mean, these really are stock cars.
Okay, that was David Hobbs talking with Alan Grice and then talking us around the circuit. We'll take a break and then return to Mount Panorama at Bathurst.
Morris is going quicker than the French Johnson car. And, of course, Johnson was in the pits for 31.5 seconds.
To Mount Panorama. As you can see out there in front is John French, but believe it or not, as we went to that break, John French pulled into the pits for one of the fastest pit stops of the race. We won't let any of this race go without showing you everything that happens in commercial breaks or otherwise. So we'll show you just how quick, in fact, that pit stop was. Okay, the most critical pit stop now for Dick Johnson, and of course for John French.
Well, John French not going to get out of the car, Mike. He's staying in there. So I think that maybe he's scheduling another stop then, because Dick Johnson would certainly want to do the last spell in the car. But French is staying in place, so it suggests it's a very brief stop. I don't think Dick wants to lose more time in the pits. Just fuel, they're checking over the tyres, a quick sip of a drink. John French takes a cut lunch with him as well. He eats food as he drives along. He needs a bit of sustenance. That was a quick stop. He's out. And I made about 35 seconds, less than that, 31 seconds from the time he came to a stop to the time he left.
Okay, that was the very, very quick pit stop by John French. They're off and running again and still holding the lead. Bob Morris, Evan, we've been looking at, was still closing prior to that pit stop.
Yes, he'd been making up time all the time, and undoubtedly that message would have been given across to John French saying, hey, he's catching you. He would have said, well, what's the gap? The gap we last had, it was just under 2 minutes, 117 seconds is the timing we have there. It was longer than that at one stage. But this race could be decided on pit stops. I would say that this car has one more to make, unless John French truly is going to try and go all the way himself, and I don't think he will. And certainly Bob Morris's car will have to come in again for one more stop.
One of the interesting innovations of this year's James Hardy 1000 is the Wins friction proofing $5,000 award to the pit crew of the car completing the fastest time over a secret 10-lap section of the race. And the envelope that was selected, what was given to us prior to it, gives us now that the driver who was leading laps 36 to 45. Okay, we now join Peter Williamson in the car. We believe that Peter has received a ding in the back and may even be leaking fuel, but we'll get that story shortly. Okay, Peter Williamson, Mike Raymond, Peter.
Hello, Mike Raymond.
You have some problems, Peter. Okay, we'll check out the tail of the car and just see. He's coming up to try and overtake Brian Callahan in the Ford. We'll pick it up from the chopper, see if we can trace them down pit straight.
I can't see any problem there. I saw the cars that went by the commentary box here and didn't see any sign of damage, but he may have had a bump there. But the message we've got, Mike, is that he's leaking fuel. Is that correct?
That's correct. Well, we'll have to check that out.
Right, he's chasing the big Falcon. And Peter McKay, editor of Modern Motor, has been sharing with Brian Callahan, the Speedway driver. BMW in the same group as Peter Williamson.
Okay, Peter, I'm back with you.
It may be John Smith, is it? It's a bit hard to tell. The nose outliners doesn't give us a great deal. And they're probably wearing fairly similar helmets, but they've been into the pits, and I suspect it'll be Peter Williamson at the controls. They both even talk alike, so it's a bit confusing for us watching from in the car. We might try again.
Okay, it's Mike Raymond. Peter, can you read me?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. How's everything going? No problems?
We're running very strong. We've lost forward.
Yes.
But we're running very strong, and we're back where we were a few years ago. But Brian Foley's health was giving me a hard time. Anyway, history repeats itself. But the Japanese invasion is certainly on with Moffat. There's no doubt about that. The one little Japanese invasion must have ended at Finch Haven or somewhere. They've all disappeared, the Datsun boys, but Moffat's making a good showing, isn't he?
Exceptionally good. We had a report that you received a touch in the tail. Is that correct or incorrect?
Read attention in the first laps.
No, it must...
Oh, dear, oh me. I don't know whether you heard that.
We'll let you get rid of this car first.
Oh, here it goes again. He's got big doubles, that Valley. The Queensland car in front, he's backfiring unbelievably. But I was saying that Cams are considering giving us the freedoms that Moffat has, and Vigil will be one humdinger of a race if they do that. Because he's certainly proved the point, there's no doubt about that. Look at that view of Bathurst, so beautiful.
What would that allow you to do, Peter?
We're going to do a demon break here, 200 yards. Bit under. Here we go. That flag there says there's oil on the circuit somewhere. Yeah, it's right here.
Peter, it's Evan Green here. You were saying that you want to make the same sort of changes that Alan Moffat has made. What do you want to do to your car?
Well, we would like to. I mean, with Cam's permission, of course. We would like to receive much the same freedoms. His peripheral porting is sort of the same as having a 4-valve cylinder head on this sort of a car, and we would like the same opportunity to display our chassis to everybody in Australia, the same as Alan's doing, and he's doing a damn fine job of it. But when you've got corporate money like Mazda backing him and Toyota certainly help us, it's a shame that they don't just give us all the same freedoms and let us have a go and prove something. But, you know, this is a 2-litre car, and you can't really expect it to climb these great big hills with only 180 horsepower. I mean, probably 90 horsepower behind Moffat, and it makes a bit of a disadvantage. But I certainly like the opportunity to have the same grunt. These are very strong cars, and I think we make a very good race of it.
If you went to 4 valves per cylinder, what would the other manufacturers do, Peter?
What, the other manufacturers?
Yes.
Well, Datsun have got a 4-valve head, which they run in rallies. And it's under the Group 4 regulations. Hang on. Oh, gee, where's Terry out there? Hi, Terry. And there's Fiat, there's Mitsubishi, they've all got them. It seems a shame to me that oh, that's better. We can't just all have a go. Poor old Howard Masters had to play around with turbochargers. And it's a very hard job. Hang on. Oh, dear me. There's the Alpha.
Well, Peter, we appreciate the fact that you're a commentator with our team, but no commentator's role is complete unless you can throw properly to a commercial break.
I'm getting some break-up in the cutting. I heard something about a commentator. Could you repeat that?
Okay, can you read me now?
Yes.
I just said that no commentator's role is complete unless you can throw to a commercial break. Let's see what you can do.
I didn't get that either, Mike. I'm sorry. There's a lot of break-up. Here we go.
I think you've just blown your chance to be a professional television commentator. You might be quick, but you missed the cues. I think it's time for a break here in the... Oh, it's time for a break, all right. Maybe it's time for us to stop talking to Peter Williamson and let him keep on the track. Let's all take a breather for a couple of minutes from the great race.
I'm sorry about the bad communication.